think that the craziest thing is having a song that's taken me halfway across the world before I've even released it. In October 2015, I was in a lesson studying the representations of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in film and TV, and we watched Jeddah and various other visual resources leading up to Rabbit Proof Fence. And Rabbit Proof Fence got me thinking about family in our own Warramai country who had to experience the traumatic effects of stolen generation. And I remember when two aunties were telling their life story, searching for family, to when they were reunited and what it meant for them. I was heavily inspired from when they first publicly shared their stolen generation story to a school assembly where I was working at the time, and thought of the vulnerability of that moment. I feel like I'm an observational and reactive writer. Like, this is when I feel I've got the ability to share on a deeper level and trying to think of ways of telling a story that's different. Uncle Archie's Took the Children Away is iconic in terms of stolen generation songs and that theme. I've heard plenty of songs that's been very individual to that artist, but I didn't want something that was the same as that. I wanted to create a different experience. So I thought about sonically making it different and inserting a character as well from a white perspective. So I inserted the Bullyman character based on the Mr. Neville character in Rabbit Proof Fence. And I remember the line, like, if only they would understand what we were trying to do for them. And the fact that that character sees nothing strange about his position in government as a legal guardian and is completely ignorant and arrogant to the inhumanity of his actions. I wrote 80% of Bullyman in 15 minutes the moment I got home from that lesson, and I immediately knew that it needed to be a haunting lullaby. I love horror movies, and I was watching The Conjuring at that time, and I enjoyed what they did with turning toys and melodies of comfort into possessed items or haunting experiences. That music box sound, it was something that stayed with me since writing Bullyman. Like, it was something that I wanted to use, but I didn't know how to move forward with it artistically. But in terms of writing, it was probably the third piece that I finished, and I still looked at it like it was spoken word. But I definitely saw the potential in it as a song. So in the winter of 2016, I went to the Dag Sheep Station in Nundle for a songwriters retreat. It was here where I relinked and was paired with singer-songwriter Kevin Bennett. And he was there as a mentor to run a session together. And the moment I seen our names drawn out of a hat together, I knew that I had to pull this song out of the archives to finish. As a fellow Indigenous man, I knew he could relate to aspects of the story. And immediately we had the melodic ideas, but we knew it needed a third verse. It needed something to conclude the narrative. And I already had the verse punchlines that was centered around the idea of protection from family, home, protection of self. But we needed something to complete that narrative, and we couldn't come up with anything for ages that we felt was strong enough. So I ended up going for a pit stop. We both come back excited because we both had two punchlines, and it was literally the flip of a coin that we ended up choosing Your Protection Was Never Real. And this was to go along the lines with the lullaby idea of that false sense of security. I knew how important Bullyman was as poetry, because when I wrote it, living in Brisbane, I was crying. But I then knew how important it was as a song, because I was crying again, as well as many others who were in the room when I first shared it. You know, like, it stayed true to the storytelling that I'm inspired by, and that's by Mob and Three Chords and the Truth, like country music. It's everything I've grown up on. So from winter 2016 to late 2017, I was just performing it acoustically at shows. You know, I played a couple shows in Rockhampton. I opened for Ash Grumwald and Viper Creek Band. I went up to Cairns for Queensland Music Festival. I played Cairns Indigenous Art Fair, Tamworth Country Music Festival, Queensland Performing Arts Centre, like QPAC, and played it at Twilight Music Dialogues. You know, anyone that's aware of some of these places, like, that's a pretty broad demographic, you know, of people and places, and to know that it resonated with those people, like, it meant a lot to me, and it, you know, verified that I was onto something important. And I was midway through my first year of uni, completing my Bachelor of Music, and I was inspired by a film music short course and how I could psychologically make someone feel emotion with purely music and lyrics without the visual cues. So it kind of brings it back to the horror movie inspiration I had to begin with. And I finished that course, I got on the computer, went back to the drawing board and thought about ways and how I could present the song to match the emotion that I felt when singing it. So in early 2018, I was approached from Philip Matthias at the University of Newcastle to perform it at an international choral festival in Canada. Now, this was a tour with the Conservatorium of Music, and I was excited about that opportunity. Because at that time I didn't have a single release. I was just playing as many shows that I could to showcase my original music, so this was huge. I got over there and the response was amazing towards the emotion of the story, and I knew that the First Nations people in Canada have had similar experiences of genocide, betrayal and violence towards them. So to hear these accounts in first person, it was an emotional experience. And I remember being in Powell River, which is a little insular community in British Columbia, and I was singing it to their First Nations people, the Talaman, and there was an auntie in the audience, and me and her locked eyes, and it was just waterworks. You know, this was the first time that I emotionally let go of myself in song. You know, the experience and sharing stories with the First Nations mob over there is something that I'll never forget. But then I come home and I went away on the Are You OK tour, and I got to share Bullyman further with many nations, from Broome through to the Kimberleys, Darwin, Mount Isa, all the way back through to Hervey Bay, as well as, like, earlier that year being able to share it during First Nation shows and productions with Commonwealth Games. You know, those experiences from those couple of years really pushed me to want to release it, because I was starting to find my voice artistically. I had many producers approach me over time about their vision for the song, and I'm glad I stuck to my gut instinct, because that wait led me to Gareth Hudson. You know, Gareth was someone who I knew of in Newcastle. He happened to be a guest lecturer in class that I had at uni, and I approached him. He was the first person who actually asked what my vision was for the song without dictating. We spoke. I met him a couple weeks later at his studio, and He was someone who was able to articulate and express my vision musically, from the multiple versions I had of Bullyman to where we got it to be. So I sat in his studio, got the acoustic guitar out, we recorded a demo. A couple of weeks later we rounded a group of friends for a choir and instrumentation, and seriously the rest is history. It was such an amazing experience. This was the first time I was able to finish a song in a studio, and this was my debut single, and something that meant the world to me. I then reached out to one of my friends, Amber, who's an incredible artist, and she sketched a portrait of my niece, which then became the single's artwork.
Hey Jacob, it's Morgan Evans here. I heard your first single's coming out, and I just want to wish you all the best of luck, and hopefully I'll see you somewhere down.
I decided to release in NAIDOC in 2019 because I wanted to share this song in its full form with the community that means the most to me. It's where I grew up. This is where I come from. I know this story is relatable to many across our country, but this story came from the Warramai area. I remember waking up on release day to a message from my mate Ty, and sent a screenshot of the iTunes charts. We charted top 10 alternative, top 100 all genre, played on Triple J and many other radio stations around the country, and it was such a surreal experience. Like, I don't even think I could go back to that time and moment. Like, I was just so excited that I feel like I just forgot to take in those moments for what they were. It's huge to me, and I had so many people reach out, and they still do reach out, on the impact that it has made on them when they do hear Bullyman. I think the most important thing for me was that local schools were starting to implement the song. They were starting to teach the effects of local Indigenous history within the schools that that I grew up in. In late 2019, I decided to enter Bullyman in the National Indigenous Story Awards after receiving a phone call. I completely forgot about entering and got an email inviting me to the awards at La Trobe University in Melbourne. I happened to be in Echuca at the time on the border, so I decided to stay a few extra days and go down. I was kind of stoked. It was when my name was announced as the grand prize winner. I just sat there in shock. Music makes me happy, but to win something like this was a reward for the work that I've done in the last 6 years of music. But I also understand that it doesn't give back stolen, valuable time for the families that were reunited, still connecting, and those that never made it back to their people. I'm just a vessel for this story. It's not mine. So I'm just grateful that I've been able to share and impact lives, as well as connect with so many people around the world.